So I wanted to do a video like this for a while now, and after some practice and finally getting up the nerve to actually make this, I bring you the intro to my first series of videos, Worlds of Wonder. This will be a series focusing on Alice in Wonderland and stories that are derived from it. Now, I'm not an analyst. I'm not the smartest person, and frankly, a lot of important symbolism, nuance, and themes go completely over my head. They're not something I notice unless directly pointed out. I will not be pointing out deep meanings for everything. These videos will mostly be for me to openly gush about works I enjoy. I'll be pushing myself a bit to actually look more deeply into these things, but as it stands right now, this is mainly for fun and so I can work on my voice acting and animating skills. It also gives me an excuse to make a lot of Wonderland-themed art to make my points. Now, if you're still here, then you're probably wondering why I bothered with this intro video. Well, it's basically for me to be blunt. I enjoy these things. These works are not perfect. I will talk about the good and the bad, and honestly, I'm not interested in thoughtless comments. Different views are fine, I welcome different interpretation, facts I missed, and I would love to have discussions on these works. But I don't need every other person being like, "Oh, I liked that character, why don't you like them?" Because I'm going to tell you why. These are my opinions. I'm not going to preface every statement by saying, "Well, this is just my opinion," because honestly, anyone able to understand these works should be able to know that without me having to explain it. Now, with that out of the way, here's a short list of the works I'll be covering. I might add more, and this is not in the order they'll be in. I do know for sure I'm going to start off with the original Alice's Adventures in Wonderland by Lewis Carroll, and I'll be using the Avenel Books edition from, I think, 1982, as well as the Avenel Books edition of Through the Looking Glass from 1982. These are the oldest editions I could get my hands on, and from what I can tell are as close to the original story as I'm going to get. I also have a comparative textbook I got from my college library that I'll be using as well. I'll have the publication information listed in that video. They're very good. If you haven't already read them, I suggest you do in order to follow along. I will also be covering Splintered, Unhinged, Ensnared, Untamed, and Moth in the Mirror by A.G. Howard. Now, I know these are kind of like teen romance novels, but they're actually very good and have a very interesting world that I would like to explore and discuss. So they're going to be in there. If you haven't read them, again, I suggest you read them. A.G. Howard is a very good author. I will also be looking at Looking Glass Wars, Seeing Red, Arch Enemy, Princess Alice of Wonderland, the Hatter M comics, and the Hatter Madigan novel, all by Frank Bedoor. He's also a very good writer, and I also suggest you read them if you haven't. They have another interesting take on Wonderland and a very different world and story. You really only need to read the first 3 books. Princess Alice and the Hatter M books are mainly just supplemental reading that flesh out the world, but they're still very interesting and I highly enjoy them. Now, I will also be taking a look at American McGee's Alice, Alice Madness Returns, and Alice Asylum once it's released. I won't be doing any spoilers for that because it's actually a very interesting game and they're doing production on it right now. So I'm going to try not to do anything on that until the game is actually released. So that's probably going to be the last video that I do. These are very interesting, very fun takes on Wonderland, very fun games, honestly, and I highly suggest you at least take a passing glance at the cutscenes before getting into those videos. Now, I will be looking at a lot of Disney properties for Alice in Wonderland, including the original movie, the Tim Burton rendition, and the Tim Burton Through the Looking Glass, as well as the Alice in Wonderland Disney manga that they did. But I'll be looking at all of those probably in one video. I'm going to be careful with how I do those because I like having a YouTube channel. I will also be looking at another Disney comic just called Wonderland. It's interesting, I've read it, I managed to get my hands on my personal copy, and it's not a very popular comic book. But it's interesting, it's a continuation on the original movie, so I'll be doing that its own video as well. I will also be looking at a 1999 film adaptation of Alice's Adventures in Wonderland done by NBC, and it's a very good movie. I found it on Netflix a few years ago, so I'll be taking a look at that as well. The monster that I'm going to cover on this channel is one that is not very well covered across YouTube. It's actually hard to find a lot of content for this series. I will be looking at Alice in the Country of Hearts by Quinn Rose. Now, if you know what this is, you're probably rolling your eyes because, yes, it does spawn from dating games. However, it's a very interesting world. It's got very interesting characters, and outside of the main protagonist being kind of irritating, it's actually very fun. So that's going to be a huge monster on its own that I'll figure out how to tackle eventually. So right now I'm almost done writing the first 2 scripts for Alyss's Adventures in Wonderland and Through the Looking Glass. So be looking forward to those if you're interested in this series, and after that we'll see where I go from there. Anyway, thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys down the rabbit hole.